March the 18th, 2026. Guys, this is kind of part 3 of what we've been talking about in a couple of last videos. And this has to do with the Den of Thieves, and what Jesus did to them, why he did it, and why it's happening today, and how it is happening. So stay tuned. I think you'll be enlightened, and it may save a few people thousands of dollars when they realize how bad they're getting ripped off. If you remember Matthew 21:13, Jesus' statement, he said, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." And that draws from 2 Old Testament prophecies. And what happened, Jesus got a whip and whipped them and overturned their tables. And because they were not in there for anything but to sell items, they had turned again the temple into a den of thieves. And what they were doing, guys, is you could bring in your money and they would exchange it with temple currency. But you'd get ripped off. It's like less than 50 cents a dollar or something like that. But then you would be holy. But it's worse, much worse than that now, and we're going to talk about it. Now, there are a lot of discussions that link the Den of Thieves concept to several issues in modern ministry, and that's what we're going to do. In the Bible, the Den of Thieves refers to religious leaders who perverted the purpose of the temple for personal gain, often by overcharging for sacrifices or exploiting the needy. The modern parallel, guys, is that critics argue that some preachers today make merchandise with the anointing, turning spiritual services into a marketplace. Again, I'm not going to call any names. The trust factor, that's very important. It's also called the affirmity factor. But it says followers are often targeted because of their conservative and Christian beliefs, making them more likely to trust a recommendation from a religious figure, even though that figure is endorsing a gold company, especially the ones that are getting you to roll over your IRA, guys, into gold, or your savings into a gold. And what happens is you can officially order the gold, or they can hold it for you, which they prefer to do. But if you say you spend $20,000, you roll over 20,000, guys, you're only going to get about 14,000 in gold. And what happens to the other 6,000? Noble Gold gets it, and the preachers that push it on their TV shows get a big portion of it. Not only that, even if you don't go there and roll over your IRA, guys, which is very, very prevalent in the elderly that trust their preachers when the preachers are wolves in sheep's clothing. But it says the trust factor. Followers, again, are often targeted because of their conservative and Christian beliefs, making them more likely to trust a recommendation from a religious figure, even though the figure has been approached by a gold company that convinces you to roll your savings over at about a 20% to 30% loss the moment you do it. And some of the big gold companies that you see pushed on TV, guys, I've been doing the research. They have, and one very popular one, I don't want to name them, you'll know, but they say, we've got a 5-minute setup. We're just going to get your banking information. We'll get this transferred over, and your life savings transferred over very quickly. What does the 5-minute setup do? It prevents them from going into the details in the fine print on the contract. In other words, roll over the 20,000 out of your savings into IRA gold, and the preacher's going to show you that you're going to get free or 10 silver coins, not gold, which maybe in today's market may be worth $1,000. But they're not telling you how much they're making, and that it's like driving a new truck or car off the lot. It depreciates the moment you do it. In other words, they are charging you up front that much of a percentage. And you know how to find out? You ask the preacher, how much are you getting? How much percentage of our savings, our life savings that we, the elderly, depend on for the rest of our lives, how much of that are you getting, preacher? And they don't have to force you to roll over if you just follow the lead and and the preacher tells you, call the 1-800 number down there, he can get $100 up. And some of these preachers are making $1 million a year because there's so much money in this gold rollover market. But here's the catch. They also, the major gold companies that do this rollover, will tell you we have a very fast buyback. You got it? They don't tell you what percentage buyback is. That's part of not getting into the details. A lot of times it's the weight value only. And you'll lose another 20% right there if you decide, no, I'm going to buy it back. Well, there goes another 20%. So what's happening is not only are the preachers getting very rich, they're not telling you about it, but they are the wolves in sheep's clothing. Now, digging into it, it's a perfect parallel, and they will admit it, to what the modern day preachers are, and saying it's exactly the warning that Christ gave us in in the time of Passover, that what would happen. But again, you're going to lose a lot of money. Now, $100,000 rollover, which I've heard of your life savings, the preachers can make a lot more money. But you're automatically going to lose $20,000 the moment you sign the contract. Think about that. Ask them that. And another thing, a lot of them won't give you the current price, like some gold dealers will, or silver dealers. They'll, up on their website, you'll see a current price or a spot price. They won't do that. They will manipulate you into talking to someone that will judge what you can handle. Anyway, so you're getting ripped off at Jump Street. Now, another thing that preachers are doing, besides getting very rich, and not telling you about it, is the fact that they get travel perks, tour perks that they can invite people on, and then they make money, guys, off the people they invite on the tours. The people that come with them have to pay $500 or $600 over the normal price, and the preacher gets that. Then anything, and they've got set up deals with restaurants and shops that the tour guides are gonna take them on, and they get a kickback from those. And at the same time, they want to sell people, or sell them in the fact of a tour boat, a big boat, and take them into very dangerous territories, Mediterranean and Caribbean tours right now, because they don't care about it. So what's happening again, when you see this happening, guys, it is a warning from Christ about the Den of Thieves. And it refers to religious leaders who perverted the purpose of the temple for personal gain, often by, again, overcharging for sacrifices or exploiting the needy. And they will say, this is a love offering. That's one of the things in the articles that I dug up. One of the things that they use, this is a love offering. It's because they love your money and they love to take it away from you. I'm not going to name their names. If you don't know them, don't worry about the video. But we're all about, in the last few videos, going to the heart of the truth. Now, God bless his soul, but I will mention one name because he's no longer with us. It's Charlie Kirk. He was one of the people that pushed this. And that had nothing to do with what happened to him, but that was, you probably heard it there. But the sales pitch they use, these companies often use end-time philosophies or warnings of economic collapse to encourage church members to move their retirement savings into gold IRAs. Again, the 5-minute process. The gold market's extremely fast setup process, claiming users can get going, like I said, in 5 minutes, which bypasses the deeper due diligence needed for financial or major financial moves. They're talking about your money. Now, let me say this. Not all gold companies are illegitimate businesses, but some of them just sell bullion or coins, and they will keep it for them if you're foolish enough to do that. But when they want you to roll over your IRA life savings so that they can rip you off 10 or 20% Jump Street within minutes, guys, they've got you, and there's no way to recover it. Then that's a different thing from selling bullion, right? But you know, another thing that they say is it's a biblical currency. Well, I want you to research, do yourself a favor, because some of you guys are following where I'm getting with this. I've probably losing 15 or 20 subscribers per video and getting a lot of negative comments, probably 5%, maybe less, 3% negative. But, and listen, you know what that means to me when I lose subscribers on videos like that? It's kind of like, to me, separating the wheat from the chaff, and also lightening the load, because not everyone's going to understand it. We can't expect that. And, you know, a small group is very powerful, especially when they know this truth, they understand it. But let me tell everyone this, that we're taught that if you are taught certain things and that light is lit within you, you can't put that flame under a bushel simply because you think, well, I know it, that's good enough for me, that get me through. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about, I'll put that flame out. Just like he told the 7 churches, I'll take those angels away from you. In other words, use it or lose it. Now, so that means if you get to a degree of knowledge that you feel comfortable with sharing, or you see people making mistakes, then you should at least attempt to discuss it with them, talk about it, and work it out, or whatever. Just make sure they're aware that there's other options than what they've been taught, maybe. But in other words, you can't just sit back and rock in your rocking chair or whatever you're doing, because you'll lose that knowledge. You're going to lose that ability to discern that was given to you when that light was lit. Again, don't put your candle under that bushel basket. That's what Christ said about work and faith together. Anyway, these hidden fees, guys, some customers have reported to the Better Business Bureau that companies may charge high flat fee rates, sometimes up to 40%, or sell silver at a significant markups above the spot price. Now, the exploitation of faith, that's what this video is about. It's called Regulators have charged various precious metal firms with elder fraud for specifically targeting Christians and convincing them to liquidate secure assets for metal based on divine warnings or market crashes. But guys, again, the biblical currency, check and look at what was the first gold coin. It was Persia. It had a Persian symbol on it. Had nothing to do with Christ or anything else. The second one was by Constantine, and he was a Roman implant like some other ones we know, and he again said he had a divine vision. But what he did when he took over, he put on that gold coin, was the second one that I know of, was the sun god. And that was because most of his constituents were still Romans and pagans that worshiped the sun god, so he had to try to please everybody. And the only reason he tied the Christians in was just the same reason that Rome used other methods that we've talked about, implants, to control Christianity. They knew they would change it, but they had to control it, and that way they ruined it. And that's exactly what happened. If you study Constantine, you know, in the vision, he saw this cross in the sky, and then, but nobody else really saw it. And so it's kind of like the road to Damascus in a lot of ways, used by the same group just years later. If it worked then, why not try it again? Anyway, when he did that, I think it was the shields of the warriors that he put the cross on. I may be mistaken, it was something. And what he did, the reason he did that was to include the Christians into his draft of the armies, because Constantine ended up being the head emperor of Rome because of his constant battles and killing and overthrows, until he finally, and what he did, again with the sun god disc, the sun god on the first gold coin that he made, the second known, was that he was tying in the Romans, the pagans, the Christians, and everybody. He was not a Christian, but he knew that in order to take Rome, which he eventually did, he was the Roman emperor just like Caesar, that lied about his divinity. And again, he knew to bring in the Christians, and so, but his gold coin again had nothing to do with Christian. It was pagan worship of the sun god. So if that's biblical currency, sorry about that. But what happened in the Old Testament, if you look it up, there was some trading in gold and silver, but it was not in coins. It was in weight, things like that. But this is a speculation deal. In other words, you give me $100,000 and I'm going to do it in 5 minutes. And listen to me, guys, and if you're afraid to ask whoever's telling you these questions, then you deserve what you get. But I think you're wiser than that. But again, $100,000, look at the fine print. They're going to back it up with gold, and you're going to get, whatever delivery service, or if you keep it in paper in a vault, $80,000 worth. So it would take 20 years at the average rate of gold of its increase in price for you to get back to zero. You made no money, but you've risked everything for 20 years, guys. And I don't think under the current system that we're using for banking and everything else is going to exist that long, because everything's going to depend on electricity, the internet, things like that, and it can go down just like with Bitcoin or something, and everything's wiped out. Why not leave it safe and secure wherever you've got it, and whatever you got to do with it. But when you're looking at and the preachers are telling you, look, we're going to give you some free silver, and although we're going to pocket several $1,000s, and we're going to risk your life savings. So there's some things, and I guess if I were you, and the one thing I would say would flash that red light to me would be, is your credit card involved in your salvation? What are you giving up? Is that what they're telling you? And again, we talk about the perks, the trips, the vacations, the hotel rooms, and then they're making money off their people on these, what they call holy tours, Holy Land tours. Think about that. Why they're making a killing and putting you at risk, not only physically, but if you're in a danger zone, but also economically, and they are deceiving you and your spirit. But guys, there are right now different groups that are winning in court. Some are talking about precious metal dealers are charged in $180 million elderly fraud having to do with what's called I guess the best way to say it is, the flocks trust the shepherd, even if he's not a shepherd. What did Jesus say? You will know a hireling. You will know a hireling. Why? Because if the sheep get in danger, he flees. He doesn't care about it. He's there for the money. I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's late. I'm kind of tired. Had to break several times here. But it's important now that since we're on the topic, and without naming names, to wake people up, because this is all tied together, believe it or not. You talk about Hova meaning ruin and destruction, and when they take your life savings, that is ruin and destruction for you. That begins a downhill spiral for everybody. You got to try to make it somehow, and they're getting fat and rich. You know the people I'm talking about. I'm never going to mention their name. You know the companies I'm talking about. I shouldn't have to. They should be ashamed of themselves. And if you're ashamed to ask your preacher if they've done this to you, or if they keep telling you about this, you're afraid to ask them, what is the cut you make, and what is the percentage of loss I endure at the point of sale? Am I getting 80% of the gold you're talking about, and you're getting 20% of it, you and the broker? Is that what's happening? If you're afraid to do that, then again, you deserve to lose it. My children are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That's what this is about. It's not about calling out people. It's about warning people. Not the demons that are doing it. Not the Den of Thieves in the temple, where Jesus tore their butts up. So, why? Because it should be used should be used to teach. Not as a mall. Not as a ripoff. And it happened to be the Gentile section of the temple. They were really taken advantage of, exploited, overcharged. and just to make them, because they thought they were obligated to do it, because somebody convinced them that it was the right thing to do. And we know what the scribes and Pharisees do. And we're dealing with the same group of wolves now. They're going to hate me because they're going to know that I know. And so be it. We're delayed in the day. Every dart is a scar, but it's a medal of honor. And it's time to separate the wheat from the chaff, and that's what we're going to do. And if that's whatever way we have to do it, we will try to be straightforward with it, to the point, as best as my old mind will work. And we'll get through this. Knowledge is absolute power in the sense of your spirit and understanding what's being done to you. And if they're leading you astray on things like that, how are they leading your spirit? How is that helping you? Something's wrong. There's a disconnect, right? Anyway, guys, we're watching it. There's more to come. Just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Again, I said this. I mean it. When you get old, it's harder to do these type videos and make sense, but the fire won't go out, and I have to do it. Anyway, it's a heads up, guys. Be safe.